I love this Star Trek, the original series episode. Even though Kirk's behavior is disturbing, there's a certain kind of Star Trek, the original series episode, that fans love because it's iconic, pulpy, dramatic, and deeply nostalgic, yet also makes us squirm a little. Few entries capture that odd duality quite like The Enemy Within. It's one of those episodes I adore, not just for its place in Trek history, but for the raw, unfiltered weirdness of watching Captain James T. Kirk behave in ways that feel radically out of character and, at times, downright unsettling. Still, I can't help it. I love this episode, even though Kirk's behavior veers into territory that's uncomfortable to revisit through a modern lens. Part of the fascination comes from the fact that The Enemy Within is so very Star Trek. It's high-concept sci-fi grounded in moral conflict, filtered through the bold melodrama of 1960s television. And yet, simultaneously, it's the kind of story that could never be told exactly the same way today, not without major reworking. It's a story about identity, moral duality, and the fabric of leadership. It's also a story where William Shatner gets to act his heart out, splitting himself into a good Kirk and an evil Kirk after a transporter malfunction divides him into two beings. The premise is brilliant. If you stripped away a human's confidence, ambition, and darker impulses, leaving only their empathy and gentleness, would you still have a functional person? To that end, The Enemy Within sets out to explore the shadow self we all carry within us, and what happens when those shadows take the wheel. But perhaps unintentionally, the episode also highlights the unsettling implications of what the evil Kirk does, the fear he inspires, and the trauma he inflicts on at least one of his crewmates. And yet, it remains one of the most unforgettable stories in the entire TOS catalog. The episode that gave us an icon, a nightmare, and everything in between. When fans think of The Enemy Within, they often think of two things: the image of Shatner as evil Kirk prowling the corridors of the Enterprise with smeared eyeliner and a wild expression, and the thematic revelation that both halves of a person, noble and terrible, are required to create a complete human being. The fact that the episode manages to be both iconic and deeply disturbing is precisely why it stands out so strongly. Shatner deserves a standing ovation for this performance. Love him or hate him, the man committed fully. Evil Kirk is primal, predatory, unpredictable, and amplified to 11. Good Kirk is fragile, anxious, and visibly unraveling. The dual portrayal gives the story a theatrical intensity that's hard not to appreciate. And yet, the more you appreciate it, the more you realize this episode is dark. That delightful Trek optimism we know so well, it's conspicuously absent for long stretches, replaced with a creeping sense of dread as evil Kirk roams the ship causing chaos. His assault on Yeoman Rand is particularly difficult to watch and even more difficult to contextualize within the good Kirk versus bad Kirk metaphor. The scene was shocking in the 1960s and is far more disturbing today. It's the kind of moment that makes you pause, swallow, and remind yourself that you're watching a show from a different era, one that used allegory to explore moral complexity, but didn't always fully reckon with the very real implications of the stories it told. And yet, ironically, that's also part of why the episode continues to resonate. It forces a confrontation with the uncomfortable truth that the parts of ourselves we try to repress are not simply bad, but essential. The episode's execution can be messy, but its ambitions are surprisingly thoughtful. Why Kirk's disturbing behavior is the point, even if it isn't enjoyable. The hardest part of watching The Enemy Within isn't actually the assault scene, though that's unquestionably the lowest and most upsetting moment. What sticks with me most is the way evil Kirk embodies impulses that, the episode argues, exist in every human, including a heroic starship captain. Kirk's leadership, courage, and charisma, traits that fans adore, would be impossible without the same primal instincts that allow a person to make decisions under pressure, assert authority, or take risks. On paper, it's a brilliant philosophical argument. In execution, it's chilling. TOS often showcased Kirk as a model leader, the ideal human carved from bravery, compassion, decisiveness, and charm. But The Enemy Within twists that model, revealing that some portion of Kirk's greatness originates from parts of himself that are uncomfortable to acknowledge. That's what makes the episode unforgettable. It dares to explore the dark underbelly of the classic Starfleet hero archetype. The episode becomes a psychological autopsy of Kirk's soul. Good Kirk is indecisive without his counterpart, desperate for help, terrified of command decisions. Evil Kirk is violent, manipulative, volatile, but also determined, assertive, and capable of action. The disturbing behavior is not a flaw in the script, but a deliberate magnification of everything Kirk tries to keep under control. The idea that these impulses are both dangerous and indispensable gives the episode emotional and narrative weight. While I cringe at Evil Kirk's actions, I also appreciate the audacity of the story's attempt to dissect leadership itself. The Enemy Within suggests that heroes are not born from moral purity, but from the controlled fusion of light and shadow. Kirk is admirable not because he lacks a dark side, but because he keeps it in check. That's an uncomfortable truth, but it's also a compelling one. Spock, Rand, and the uneasy legacy of the episode. It would be impossible to talk about the episode without discussing its effects on the surrounding characters. Rand's trauma is treated with surprising seriousness for the 1960s, but the communal response still reflects the limitations of the era in which the episode aired. The scene is meant to be horrifying, and it is, but it's also framed through the lens of early sci-fi television, where the emotional aftermath is minimized for the sake of returning the show to status quo. Spock's comment at the end, "The imposter had some interesting qualities," is infamous, and understandably so. Modern audiences have widely criticized the line as tone-deaf, but in context it reflects the episode's core thesis. There is something valuable, even necessary, in the impulses we fear. Still, the line undercuts Rand's experience in a way that modern Trek would never allow. This mix of thoughtful sci-fi exploration and clumsy handling of real-world trauma gives the episode a strange legacy, important, iconic, but uncomfortable. And yet I return to it again and again. Why? Because despite its flaws, it remains one of the most thematically daring stories of the series. The story is bigger than its flaws, and more human because of them. What keeps The Enemy Within compelling isn't just that it showcases Kirk's worst impulses, it's that it gives us a rare glimpse into his vulnerabilities. Good Kirk falling apart as he loses confidence is tragic, sympathetic, and deeply humanizing. He's the version of Jim we almost never see, the man who fears he can't live up to the image of Captain Kirk. And maybe that's why I love the episode so much. Star Trek often depicts its captains as paragons of virtue, brilliant, moral, almost superhuman. Seeing Kirk literally torn into pieces, stripped to his extremes, and unable to function as a whole adds a rare layer of emotional complexity. His fear, confusion, and desperation give depth to his character in a way that triumph and swagger alone never could. Evil Kirk may be disturbing, but good Kirk is heartbreaking. When the two are reunited, the relief on both faces says more than any moralizing speech ever could. It's the relief of becoming whole again, accepting both the darkness and the light within oneself.